I think people need to remember that scientific journals, of which I'm on the advisory board of several and have been for a long time and are well-meaning things, but let's keep in mind, they're run by people. And, the goal of those journals ultimately is to publish papers that are true, but that get people to read them. The more subscriptions, the more they sell, right? So I have a good friend who's is a senior editor at a journal. There's really only 3 top-tier journals: Nature, Cell, and Science. He said and I asked him once, I said, what determines whether or not one paper is accepted or not? And he said, well, we get to determine, obviously the reviewers have to give it thumbs up at some point, but we get to determine the direction that the journal wants to go. So during the pandemic, there was an enormous incentive for publishing papers in these journals that provided some either hope or fear or whatever it was exciting at the time, because people were buying up these journals like crazy. I mean, they have to pay their staff too. So it's a business like anything else. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, there is, aside from the federal research budget, which is frankly, we have a much greater budget than in other countries for research relative to the total amount available, but it's still very low compared to what we need. But money is what drives research. I mean, it's not going to – the more money you have, the more margin for error you can have in terms of the people in your lab. Like if you only have $1 million a year operating budget, like it's a business. You can have 2 or 3 really good people, and if someone's not so good, that's bad. If you have a giant budget, you can have 20 people and 10 of them can suck. That's rare to see that. Usually it's a mixture of competent to talented, the occasional bad apple. And those bad apples are very, very dangerous. And the bad apples I'm talking about are not the kind of people that necessarily go around creating data out of nowhere. These are the people who slice off and make experiments that didn't work kind of disappear. Oh, there was something wrong with that mouse. That is a serious problem in science, far more than fabrication of data.
And how often does that occur?
Oh, it's incalculable, but I would say that kind of – I've been in laboratories big and small across my career. I've been around them a lot. Everyone in every field knows the papers that are like, yeah, nobody believes that.
And these papers are influenced by money?
So
Generally?
not directly. So the PIs, the lab, this is the way it works. The lab heads, to get to a position where you're running a laboratory at a major university or any university, frankly, you have to love what you're doing. I mean, you don't make a lot of money as a university professor. Mm-hmm. There are incentives through things like companies, and a lot of professors now have companies, and we can talk about that, and that's complicated sometimes or not complicated. But the point is that heads of labs want to make fundamental discoveries. They want to be true. The 3 biggest fears for a real scientist are to get something wrong and to get it wrong for the wrong reasons. The wrong reasons would be someone comes to your laboratory and sees an opportunity to please the PI. This is, I think, one of the major sources of error in science. Publishing papers as a postdoc is what gets you a job. So I've known over the years postdocs, and there's a lot of discussion about this is inside ball of science, where someone gets there and realizes that the head of this lab has a pet hypothesis that's really exciting to them. Why is it exciting? Because it's exciting. They like the idea, but also it would allow them to renew their funding. Yes, definitely, money's involved. And then that person goes and does experiments and shows the PI the experiments that work and doesn't show them the experiments that don't work. And then tells themselves, those experiments didn't work because, the centrifuge was off or the mouse was sick or something, gives themselves reasons why it was okay to remove data. That occurs, I think, I'm going to guess here. I don't know, but based on my observation, that's probably about 10 to 15% of the top tier published papers, I think, don't last, meaning in the years following, they don't replicate and they go nowhere. And I don't think it's because people made up data, quote unquote. I think it's because they threw out bad data or they threw out data that didn't fit their hypothesis and labeled it no good. That is very common. Now, people who, quote unquote, fudge data, make up data, I would say that's 2%,